which is why social media is so addictive. A lot of times people end up on social media for hours and hours because they're escaping a reality that they don't want to face, right? They can't deal with it. A lot of people end up at a bar drinking because they can't deal with what's going on at home or what's going on with their life. They can't face that reality. So when the reality becomes difficult, then human beings want to find some comfort in, and some kind of distraction. So it's not just, oh, they saw some entertainment, they ran towards it. Put it in its context. They were going through a really tough time, and in those kinds of times, those kinds of things become all the more attractive. Assalamu alaikum. Before you begin this video, just quickly wanted to let you know that so much of the work on the Quran has been completed on Bayyinah TV. I want you to enjoy systematically studying the Quran from the beginning all the way to the end in brief and then in great detail. And to do that, I'd like for you to sign up on BayyinahTV.com. And once you appreciate what's going on in Bayyinah TV, I want you to become an ambassador for it and share that subscription with friends and family and give it as a gift also. Thank you. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم وإذا رأوا تجارة أو لهوا انفضوا إليها وتركوك قائما قل ما عند الله خير من اللهو ومن التجارة والله خير الرازقين رب اشرح لي صدري ويسر لي أمري واحلل عقدة من لساني يفقهوا قولي فالحمد لله والصلاة والسلام على رسول الله وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين أما بعد. Once again, everyone, Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi ta'ala wa barakatuh. For we are attempting to understand the final ayah of Surah Al-Jumu'ah, ayah number 11. A rough translation is what I will start with. وَإِذَا رَأَوْا تِجَارَةً And when they see trade, أَوْ لَهْوًا or distraction. انفضوا إليها, they run towards it or they disperse towards it. وَتَرَكُوكَ قَائِمًا They leave you standing. قُلْ مَا عِنْدَ اللَّهِ خَيْرٌ مِّنَ اللَّهْوِ وَمِنَ التِّجَارَةِ Tell them what is in Allah's possession is better than distraction and better than trade or business. وَاللَّهُ خَيْرُ الرَّازِقِينَ And Allah is the best of all providers. Boys, hey boys, hey you boys, yeah guys, you're distracting. So turn this way. Yeah. Cool. We're cool. We're cool. Okay. Very good. All right, so inshallah, so as we wrap up this ayah, I want to just start with a little bit of vocabulary and then we'll get into it. There are a few key words, tijara, lahu, infadda, taraka, and then rizq. Those are the few key words that in this ayah. So we'll start with tijara so you guys understand that word better. The word tijara is one of those words in Arabic that is very rare because the ta and the jim, they don't really come together in Arabic in the beginning of a word. It's the only word in Arabic like that. So usually Arabic words are made up of 3 root letters, most of them, and there's no other word that has ta and jim together like that, except for tijara. The word ittajara, which means to trade or to seek a reward, al-amal talaban lil-ajr, any work you do hoping that you'll get paid will be called tijara. So that's the first basic meaning. التصرف في رأس المال طلبا للربح When you invest, hoping that you'll make some profit from it, investments are also called tijara. So far tijara is work. Anything you're hoping to get paid for, investments. فلان تاجر بكذا أي حاذق به عارف الوجه المكتسب منه. When something is a tajir of something, that means they're really good at it. And they know how to earn from it. So like an expert can also be called a tajir. Okay, someone is a tajir in something, that's their trade. Like their trade is so-and-so, their trade is mechanics, their trade is cars, etc., etc. So that's another meaning. أما تغليب اسم التاجر على الخمار فقد كان هو الذي يعتصرها ويختزلها ويشربون عنده ويعطون الأجر. Most of the time, the word tajir was actually used for the guy that sells wine. In the old Arabic, before Islam, they used this word very commonly for the wine seller. He was the one selling the wine. He was also the bartender. He was the one storing it, and they used to sit with him and he would pour it for them and tell them stories, and then they would pay him. So he was doing all the work, right? So from beginning to end. And from it, they kind of started using that for anybody who makes money doing all kinds of work. So it kind of expanded in its meaning. Anyway, now this ayah, another word that we're going to see, and I'll just explain the word to you ahead of time,
is the word lahu. Lahu actually commonly gets translated distraction. And you might see, for example, some short surahs you may remember, Alhaakumut Takathur, right? So alha is from this word, lahu. And it actually means the back of your throat, the uvula, the thing that's hanging in your throat, dangling, that's actually called al-laha. And luhwa is, they have those grinders that make the seed into powder. They make the seed into wheat, right? When they drop the seeds in it, the thing that's dropped in it, that's actually called a luhwa. So from it came the idea that when you drop something deep inside, like this thing that's hanging deep inside, and you're dropping the seed inside the grinder, and from it came the idea that when you are involved in an activity, that you get sucked into it. You just get pulled into it and you kind of get lost in it, right? That kind of an activity is called lahu. So for example, if you're, I don't know, watching a movie, playing a game, you know, you're just scrolling TikTok on your phone or something, and you lost track of time, and you get deeper and deeper in it, and the world around you stops to exist, right? And when that happens, then that is a form of lahu. So from it came the idea of distraction. This word was used even for the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. فَأَنْتَ عَنْهُ تَلَهَّى in Surah Abasa, right? أَمَّا جَاءَكَ وَأَمَّا مَنْ جَاءَكَ يَسْعَى وَهُوَ يَخْشَى فَأَنْتَ عَنْهُ تَلَهَّى, from the same origin, right? So the Sahabi Abdullah ibn Maktoum, he was a relative of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, a distant relative from the in-law side, and he was also blind. And he came somehow to ask the Prophet a question, sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam had a rare opportunity to talk to one of the leaders of Quraysh. The leaders of the Quraysh, first of all, you can't get a hold of them easily. But if you do get a rare chance to talk to them, you should take full opportunity and speak to them as best chance you get, right? So the Prophet is taking this opportunity to talk to one of the leaders about Islam, and Abdullah ibn Maktoum, who's one of his family members, who actually, because you're family, you have access. So you can talk to him anytime. But he came and he interrupted the conversation. But he's also blind. But the thing about being blind is that when you're blind, your other senses are more sharp. Right? So he's blind, but he's not deaf. Which means he can hear that there's already a conversation going on. But it didn't matter to him. He was so feeling such a need of urgency to ask the Prophet ﷺ whatever question he wanted to ask. So he interrupted the conversation. Now, the Prophet ﷺ did not want to interrupt him and say, hey, Abdullah, let me finish this and I'll talk to you. Just give me a minute, I'll talk to you. Even that much the Prophet ﷺ thought would be too harsh for Abdullah. It would be too much for him, because he would say, I came all this way to ask the Prophet ﷺ, and he would feel bad, I interrupted, I didn't realize. Or he would get the wrong idea and say, oh, I'm not that important, right? So the Prophet ﷺ did not want to make him feel bad. And he didn't want to lose the opportunity of talking to the Qurayshi leader. Now he's stuck in this situation where if he talks to Abdullah ibn Maktoum, the Qurayshi leader will be like, oh, I guess you're busy right now. I'm going to go. I have other things to do. And he's going to walk away. The opportunity is gone. So the Prophet ﷺ was stressed about what to do. And when he was stressed, there was a bulge on his forehead. This is called abas. Like when these lines show up on your forehead and this comes together. This is abas. And the Prophet ﷺ just kind of turned his head just a little bit. You know when you do it in frustration? But no sound came out of his mouth, no word was said. And by the way, why wouldn't he say a word? Because if he says a word, who's going to hear it? Abdullah will hear it, and he's going to feel like something is off. And if he does, this is called ta'awwaha. Right? Then he's going to notice. He's going to notice that. So he's going to feel hurt. So he's not even doing that. But Allah captures that and says, Abasa wa tawalla. He frowned. He turned his head. But the thing about turning your head, or even turning your face a little bit, is Abdullah, whose feelings are supposed to be hurt, can't see it. So there's no way he could get hurt. But Allah captures that still and says, nope, not even that much. Abasa wa tawalla. Right? Now, this is Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and we're not worth the dust of his feet. But I can tell you, in being in a position of public speaking, one of the things that's very, very, very difficult is somebody comes and asks me a question. And they come and ask me a question, and they tell me that their uncle, when they were 5 years old, they took them for a walk, and then they said this, and then their cousin said this, and their brother said this, and also this other time, their grandma, she was cooking food, and then they keep going. Right? And they're telling me the entire, because they say, before I ask my question, I need you to understand the background. It all began when I was 5 years old. And then by the time I was 7, and then one time in 9th grade, and then one time, and the day I got married, and then after my first baby, and then, okay, you're almost ready for the question. Hold on. And as they're doing that, the people behind them are like, and now I have to make a choice about, can you please get to your question? Because even if I say, can you please get to your question, what might they feel? Oh my God, he has no patience for me. He doesn't want to hear what I have to say. How rude. I listened to so many hours of you. I have gone to sleep. I have gone to sleep for 10 years listening to you, and you couldn't even hear about my uncle. You know, but in my head, I'm thinking, if I am not going to cut this short, then the other person is going to think I'm being rude to them, right? And then there's a few hundred of you. There's one of me. Right? So if I give each of you 1 minute, right? Just 1 minute, that would be how many minutes? That'd be 400 minutes. And each one of you would feel like, I only got 1 minute. And I would feel like I'm almost dead. Because so when you're in a position of any kind of leadership, sometimes you are, and this is not just in public speaking, parents, for example, 3 of your kids come and talk to you at the same time. And you can't talk to all 3 of them because you only have one mouth, right? So you decide to pick one of them. And what do the other 2 feel all of a sudden? All of a sudden they feel like, oh yeah, okay, yeah, listen to her first. Yeah, she's the favorite, right? Or you hear in the background, you hear, you know, whatever. You hear that just on the little bit of, you know. So there's this difficult position he was put in. And Allah even captured that and said, for a moment, you got distracted from the blind Sahabi because you were trying to get the message across to the leader. I don't want you to worry about the leaders ever more than I want you to worry about the weakest of your companions. They are my VIPs. That's not my VIP. Those are my VIPs. In the world's eyes, the millionaire, the billionaire, if I had a chance to give da'wah to Elon Musk, or if I had a chance to talk to Jeff Bezos about zakat or something, you know, that's a huge opportunity. And then there's a guy who doesn't have a job, who's, you know, he's trying to make whatever money he can, driving an Uber, and he's not making his expenses, and he has a question, and all of a sudden I'm like, what's going to be a bigger benefit to Islam? If I can get Jeff Bezos zakat money, or if I can, you know, talk. And Allah is teaching a powerful lesson to the Prophet ﷺ, that he, you know, فَأَنْتَ عَنْهُ تَلَهَّ. And Allah says, وَأَمَّا مَنْ جَاءَكَ يَسْعَى وَهُوَ يَخْشَى. And the one who came to you rushing, Allah mentions yas'a. You know how hard it is for a blind person to walk fast? Allah acknowledges that. And He says, وَهُوَ يَخْشَى. And he's afraid that he might disobey Allah. He's full of fear of Allah. And the more you are mindful of Allah, the more Allah says, فَاذْكُرُونِي أَذْكُرْكُمْ. You remember me, I will remember you. So Allah is now remembering him. And He says, فَأَنْتَ عَنْهُ تَلَهَّ. You got distracted from him. You got too busy that you couldn't give him attention. And it's not like the Prophet wasn't giving him attention. He was just had a turn of a head. But the standard is very high for our messenger, sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And if that's the standard, and we say, you know, sometimes I hear things and I just say, really? Do you really believe that? Because people say, bro, we have to follow Quran and Sunnah. Quran and Sunnah. Quran and Sunnah. How many times do you hear that? Quran and Sunnah. I was like, okay. What do you mean by Quran and Sunnah? Well, you know, the miswak, the beard size. Let's check the beard size to make sure that it's on the Sunnah. Let's make sure that, you know, the clothing. And you know what? Some of those things can be argued, but there are some things that cannot be argued. There are multiple variations of how to interpret some of those sunnah of the Prophet ﷺ. Fine. But there are some things that are inarguable. How to treat people. There's no ambiguity. Sunnahs of the Prophet ﷺ. Where are those sunnahs, bro? Where did those sunnahs go? That's not Quran, that's not sunnah? You know? So we also get distracted by certain things in the face of other things. And we've come up with our own, you know, we have to do the greater good. And you can do a lot of bad things and hurt a lot of people because you're worried about the greater good. You know? So this anyway, so that's a side note, but about lahu. Lahu actually means to get distracted by something that keeps you from something more important. Right? It keeps you from something more important. It's happened sometimes to me, like I'm going to a doctor's appointment or something, and I'm not going to get a chance to get this appointment. It was like 6 months waiting or something. And I got a chance, and I have a work meeting. And what happens with me with work meetings is, I don't know what it is. I have to drive while I'm having a meeting. I can't sit and have a meeting. I have to be walking, driving, doing something. And the more intense the meeting is, the more straight I drive. So I miss the exit because I'm having a meeting. I'm like, what did you say? I'm like, oh, there goes the meeting. That's also lahu. Lahu, because one thing distracted me from something else. That's the meaning of that. Okay, so that's just some vocabulary that I want you to know. And lahitu bi shay'in also means to fall in love with something. To actually fall in love with something. Like you're just completely enveloped in it. You know, like you lost in love, the idea of lost in love. You just fallen in love. That's how it's used actually in Arabic. وَكَذَلِكَ لَعِبْتُ بِهِ. Just in the same way this word is used in when you just play, when you're playing with something and you're just engrossed in the play, you're lost in the game. Like some of you are gamers. I'm a gamer. I don't know any other gamers here. There's a few. Alhamdulillah. Okay, good. It's okay. It's okay. We'll have a support session later on. Right, when you're really in the game, and then doesn't matter who the family member is, they walk in front of you. Like you have one hit left on the boss. It took you so long to get to that one hit. He's crushed you so many times. You've almost broken the controller 6 or 7 times now. And finally, there's one hit left. And your mother just walks right by. And she doesn't just walk right by. They pause for a second. What, do you want some water? وَبِالْوَالِدَيْنِ إِحْسَانًا. I don't know what it is, but I think the women in our families, they know when to come in front of you. If you're watching a football game and it's tied and there's 30 seconds left and the other team is marching towards the goal line and they're already in the penalty, they're in this area, that is when your wife will just come right in front of you. Do you want some chips? And you do this, and she'll do this. And then you do this, and she'll do this. It's a test of your iman and the stability of your marriage. وَتَشَاغَلْتُ وَغَفَلْتُ بِهِ عَنْ غَيْرِهِ. When you become really busy with something and you get distracted of all other things, you don't remember anything else. إِنْ غَمَسْتُ فِيهِ مَعَ عَدَمِ جَدْوَاهُ. You completely drowned yourself in something with no consequence of anything besides it. So this is actually the meaning of lahu. Okay, so now Fadl will talk about it a little bit later. I'll come back to that. But I want to give you the narration first. So behind this surah or behind this ayah, there's a story. There's an event. And for starters, I will tell you that there's a possibility, according to some mursal narrations, that this happened 3 or more times. So it didn't happen one time. It actually happened multiple times. And to set the stage for this, I'll just read through it, and whatever part needs explanation, I'll give you some more details, okay? So this is from Sahih Muslim. أن النبي صلى الله عليه وسلم كان يخطب قائما يوم الجمعة. Rasul صلى الله عليه وسلم used to stand and give the khutbah on the day of Friday. فجاءت من عير من الشام فجاءت عير من الشام. A caravan came from Syria. Okay? فانتقل الناس إليها. So people rushed towards the caravan. So we're not getting the details yet. All we know is the caravan came from Syria. The Prophet ﷺ is giving khutbah, and people got up and they ran over to the caravan. Now, just so you understand what a caravan is, it's a bunch of camels, donkeys, horses, whatever, with carts, and they've got, wheat, barley, fruits, they've got clothes, they've got jewelry, they got all kinds of stuff that they're going to sell. It's like a bazaar, right? And they're coming, and they brought all these goods with them, and what they usually bring with them are women that dance and sing, or children that dance and sing, like a little circus. They're going to do some fire tricks. They're going to do some somersaults, entertainment. They bring a whole show with them, right? So they do that, and they bring that in the middle of the city. There's some places in the city in Medina that were specified for that. And that was the time for you to go catch some good shopping. حتى لم يبقى إلا 12 رجلا. So people went towards it until only 12 people were left. So the Prophet ﷺ is giving khutbah. Everybody runs off. Only how many? 12 people are left. Some narrations say 11. Some narrations say 8. Some narrations say there's a virus. And then there are some narrations even say 40. there were 40 people left. But the point is, a bunch of people left. We don't know the number. And then the Mufassirun got into a debate, who were the 12 that were left? And then Qurtubi, for example, mentions these were the 12. Somebody added a 13th, somebody added a 14th. I won't go into those details because that's not what Allah focused on. But the event itself, the major details is what we're going to focus on. Okay, so anyway. فَأُنزِلَتْ هَذِهِ الْآيَةِ So anyway, وَأَنَا فِيهِمْ, and Jabir radiallahu anhu says, 12 people were left, I was among them. So he's narrating it, he's saying, I was among them. فَأُنزِلَتْ هَذِهِ الْآيَةِ الَّتِي فِي الْجُمُعَةِ Then this ayah came, which is in Surah Al-Jumu'ah, when they see trade and they see distraction, they rush towards it, they run towards it, and they leave you standing. So this is related to that incident when they went off running off the Jumu'ah. وقد ذكر الكلبي وغيره أن الذي قدم بها دحية ابن خليفة الكلبي من الشام. So the guy who brings the caravan, the business guy that runs the caravan, his name is Dihya. Now Dihya, you might know him from Seerah studies. Some of you that may have heard his name before. He's the person that when Jibreel alayhi salam used to come in human form, looked a lot like Dihya. Okay? So Dihya is kind of related to some other incidents in the Seerah too. Anyway, so he comes, he's the one who does the business, and he brings this trade caravan with him from Syria. عند مجاعة وغلاء سعر. Now this is the important part. He came from Syria at a time of great hunger and high prices. This is the important part now. So this caravan didn't just come anytime, it came at a time of great hunger and high prices, according to the narration of Sahih Muslim. Now why is that important? It seems pretty clear that this happened after Uhud. Some people argued that this happened after Khaybar. I would strongly disagree because of this statement. This happened after Uhud. Let me tell you why. When the Muslims came back from Khaybar, the Muslim community basically came into millions and millions and millions in wealth. They had wealth they'd never seen before. After what incident? Khaybar. Okay. In fact, the ayat that discuss what happens after Khaybar talk about fay', and fay' in Arabic means the distribution of wealth. So much wealth that we had to now figure out how to distribute it evenly and who's it going to go to. And basically for the first time, the vaults were filled. For the first time, we had serious amounts of money. That happened after Khaybar. Why would this not have happened after Khaybar? Because he's coming at a time of what? Hunger and heavy and high prices. So what does that have to do with Uhud? The people of Makkah, the Sahaba, they left basically practically all of their assets, their property, their businesses. They left them in Makkah. They moved to Medina. So they are basically refugees. They don't have any economic benefit that they bring to Medina other than being able to work, but they don't have any jobs. Now, Medina itself is not a booming economy. It's basically a farming economy and very basic economy. So they're not very rich people. And they decide that they're going to sponsor and give homes to the people of Makkah, the Muhajirun. And the ones that gave them home, Allah says about them, يُؤْثِرُونَ عَلَىٰ أَنفُسِهِمْ وَلَوْ كَانَ بِهِمْ خَصَاصَةً. They gave them preference over themselves, even though they themselves were starving. So when Allah says كَانَ بِهِمْ خَصَاصَةً means they weren't doing so well themselves. There wasn't a lot of wealth to go around, and now they're already poor to begin with, and they are now sponsoring and housing and giving hospitality to the people of Makkah. That was the situation of the Muhajirun and the Ansar. Now, even then, the Ansar, every family has a head of household, right? So the man of the house, if you will. The man, the father, the older sons, etc. They're the ones who work on the farm. They're the ones who do the trade. They're the ones who go to the well and do all the heavy work, the labor outside that makes them some money. And you should also know that swords and shields and bow and arrow, those kinds of things were extremely, extremely expensive. And you would spend your lifetime saving to get a shield. That's why, when you read about the story of Badr and we had like this many shields, we had like 12 swords and 15 this and 5 horses, and you get those, I'm butchering the numbers, but you get the idea. We didn't have much. We didn't have much because those things are extremely, extremely expensive. You understand? So the people who did have that stuff, it was kind of like their life savings that they had. Now we go into Uhud. And in Uhud, 70 Sahaba are killed. And the vast majority of the companions that are killed are actually from Medina. They're actually Madani, which means they are the heads of households. And those Sahaba that are killed, what are they wearing? Shields, whatever they have. And what do they have in their hands? sword. Basically, what they have in their hands and on their bodies is the life savings of their family. Okay? So when they die, and the Meccans come, and they take everything. They take everything. So they've taken people's life savings, and they've also, the people that we've lost in Medina are the people that were the breadwinner, the earner for the family. 70 heads of household have disappeared. And 70 families' life savings have disappeared. In a city that's already struggling economically. You understand? So now what's happened in Medina? Medina is basically going through an economic bankruptcy. Okay? The economy is collapsing. We're in a very, very bad situation. And in that bad situation, prices are high. Somebody comes and is trying to sell some goods that are not available. They're not producing as much as they used to produce because they don't have as many workers anymore. You know, people are struggling. And so when a caravan like this comes, and now the caravan came, and I told you two things with the caravan. They will bring, and we will read what they brought. I'll read this next part so it'll explain itself. وَكَانَ مَعَهُ جَمِيعُ مَا يَحْتَاجُ النَّاسُ مِنْ بُرٍّ وَدَقِيقٍ وَغَيْرِهِ. And he had what people needed of wheat and barley and basically essential grocery items. He's saying they came with essential grocery items. Why would people run towards essential grocery items unless those grocery items are no longer easily available? You understand? So they're running towards the bread, the wheat, or the rice, or the barley, or whatever they can catch because that stuff is not easily available. And I also told you they brought with them, you know, singers and circus tricks and all that other stuff. When the situation is really bad in somebody's life, then it's a really attractive thing to distract yourself from all the stresses in your life and just get away from it all for a little bit, right? Which is why alcohol is so addictive. Which is why drugs are so addictive. Which is why video games are so addictive. Which is why social media is so addictive. A lot of times people end up on social media for hours and hours because they're escaping a reality that they don't want to face, right? They can't deal with it. A lot of people end up at a bar drinking because they can't deal with what's going on at home or what's going on with their life. They can't face that reality. So when the reality becomes difficult, then human beings want to find some comfort in, you know, and some kind of distraction. You know, if you're going through a really depressed time, or you, for example, you were really working hard on some exam and you failed your exam, you find yourself watching something all night, can't sleep, distracting yourself. Because when you're left alone to your thoughts, you have to face the reality of your failure and it's too hard to face. So let me just watch something. You watch something. Then you put your phone down, you want to sleep again, you're like, no, let me just watch something again. Watch something again. This is lahu, isn't it? So it happens when people are in difficulty. So it's not just, oh, they saw some entertainment, they ran towards it. Put it in its context. They were going through a really tough time, and in those kinds of times, those kinds of things become all the more attractive. They become all the more entertaining. And you know, I used to work in a very weird neighborhood in New York when I was in high school in 1736. It was in Queens, New York. You might know Queens from Peter Parker and Spider-Man, but Queens is a crazy place. Queens has neighborhoods that are entirely Greek. It has neighborhoods that are entirely Puerto Rican, and neighborhoods that are entirely Dominican. Those are two different things. And in neighborhoods that are entirely Bangladeshi, neighborhoods that are entirely Indian, neighborhoods that are entirely and you walk into one of those neighborhoods and you feel like you just walked into a different country. Each one of those neighborhoods is like that. There's entirely Jewish neighborhoods. There's Arab neighborhoods. Steinway Street is all an Arab neighborhood. All the signs are in Arabic. Everybody talks to you in Arabic. You want to go into a restaurant, nobody's speaking in English. You could, you know, it's crazy. And then you go to some other neighborhood, everybody's talking in Spanish, you know. So I used to, because, you know, I don't come from like a wealthy family. Everybody in my family had a job. So even in high school, I had a job. I used to work at a shoe store in Queens, in New York, in the Puerto Rican neighborhood, in the Spanish neighborhood, right, where everybody spoke Spanish. And I used, because I was the guy, they look at the shoe and they say, ¿Tienes un 9 de este? You have a size 9? I was like, hey, and I have to go run downstairs to the warehouse, find the size 9, come running back up, right? So sometimes I was pretty decent at Spanish, but then sometimes they just go, and I'm like, no entiendo, disculpe, otra vez por favor. Like, could you please repeat that? I didn't understand. And they go, vives en los Estados Unidos. No entiendes español? ¿Qué es? They're like, you live in America, you don't speak Spanish? What's wrong with you? So, but anyway, The reason I bring that up is because the neighborhood was very poor, man. It was a poor, people weren't doing well in those neighborhoods, right? But in those neighborhoods, they listen to bachata and merengue and hip hop all day. And they are like, they'll buy a car, they'll buy like an old car, but they're gonna like shine it up and they're gonna put rims that cost more than their rent on each tire. And if they bought a Honda Civic or something, they'll put a giant sticker that says Civic on top. Everybody knows it's a Civic, bro. They're gonna put your name or something else, but they'll put that, and they'll drive extra slow. And they'll put back in the 90s, they'll put the bumpy on the car, like, you know, they'll roll down the street. And you look at that, like, why are they so obsessed with this? And then people would come, they make, you know, those are minimum wage jobs. I had a minimum wage job. We know what we make. Barely make enough to pay the rent and stuff. And the shoes they were selling were like, back in the day, these were like high-end, like, you know, Jordans and like, you know, like expensive sneakers, right? In a poor neighborhood. And people come and they literally buy, they'll get paid on Friday and on Saturday they're buying the most expensive sneakers. Right? They're blowing their entire paycheck on a pair of sneakers. Why though? Why? You're not going to live in your sneakers. But you know what? The reality of poverty, the reality of living in a difficult life is so harsh that when I look at these expensive sneakers, I get to feel like I have something of value. I have value. Because everything around my life has no value. I can't afford a nice place. I can't afford, you know, a decent apartment. I have to live with 8 of my cousins or whatever. But my car, the rims it got, man, it's like you live out of your car. It becomes an extension of yourselves. And by the way, even if you get really nice rims, you can't look at them. You're driving. It's for other people to look at. So the perception of me will be, I'm doing well. Or I have some kind of status or position or prestige. And this is in a poor neighborhood. By the way, people in higher society, they have their own problems. Right? They have their own way of showing prestige and distracting themselves from what's really going on in their life. Right? So people will say, oh, I'm going through a lot of depression. I need to go shopping. Right? Life is really hard. I need a new Chanel bag. Right? So they'll do that because this is also lahu, a distraction. Anyway, so and then the people needed these essentials. وَضَرَبَ بِالطَّبْلِ لِيُؤْذَنَ النَّاسِ بِقُدُومِهِ, and he would do the duffel, like the drum beat and the hand drums and stuff, the tabl, so that people would know that he's arrived. فَنَزَلَ عِنْدَ, by the way, I didn't read that part. فَنَزَلَ عِنْدَ أَحْجَازِ الزَّيْتِ. This is a location in Medina where the market used to be held. That's called أحجاز الزيت. فخرج الناس إلا 12 رجلا. So people left except 12. وكانوا في خطبة الجمعة, and they were in the خطبة الجمعة. فانفضوا إليها. So they broke away from it and they went towards it. وذكر الدار القطني من حديث جابر بن عبد الله قال. So another narration now mentioned in الدار القطني. بينما رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم يخطبنا يوم الجمعة. At the time the Prophet was giving us a khutbah on the day of Friday. إذا أقبلت عير, when the caravan all of a sudden the caravan showed up. تحمل الطعام حتى نزلت بالبقيع. It was carrying food, and it landed at Baqi', in another location. So it seems from the narration, one time it comes to Ahjaz al-Zayt, another time it comes to a location called Al-Baqi', and what we call Al-Baqi' also. Right? It sets up in different places. From this and other evidences, people derive that this happened multiple times. On multiple Fridays, the bazaar came and set up. Okay. فقد ذكر أبو داود في مراسيله السبب الذي ترخصوا لأنفسهم في ترك سماع الخطبة. This is important. So Abu Dawood in his marasil means narrations that are mursal. Mursal means there's some break in the chain. So it's not coming directly A narrated to B narrated to C. There's some break in the chain, okay? But regardless, this narration seems to be a really good explanation of what happened. So he's mentioning it despite that. He says, why would they allow themselves to leave listening to the khutbah? Because of that. وَقَدْ كَانُوا خَلِيقًا بِفَضْلِهِمْ أَلَّا يَفْعَلُوا. And everybody knows that the Sahaba and the status that they have, it seems that given the way they are and the character and the morals and the manners that they have, they wouldn't have done that. So why would they do that? فَقَالَ حَدَّثَنَا. So he's going to explain that through a narration. Okay? فحدثنا محمود بن خالد قال حدثنا الوليد قال أخبرني أبو معاذ بن بكر ابن معروف أنه سمع مقاتل بن حيان قال, so these were the names, but anyway, كان رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم يصلي الجمعة قبل الخطبة مثل العيدين. This is pretty cool. In the beginning, when Jumu'ah first came, the Prophet ﷺ used to pray 2 rak'ah and then give the khutbah just like we do in Eid. Before, the 2 rak'ah used to be first and the khutbah used to be second. Okay? Then, حتى كان يوم الجمعة والنبي يخطب. And just like it was, there was the day of Friday and the Prophet ﷺ was giving the khutbah. وقد صلى الجمعة. And he had already led the Jumu'ah prayer. The prayer was already done and now he was giving the speech. Okay. فدخل رجل فقال إن دحية بن خليفة الكلبي قدم بتجارة. So a person walked in when he started his speech and said, by the way, Dihya is here. He brought a caravan. The caravan's here, guys. Somebody walked in and just kind of announced it. وكان دحية إذا قدم تلقاه أهله بالدفاف. And when Dihya came, his people came with doves and drums. فخرج الناس. People left. فلم يظنوا إلا أنه ليس في ترك الخطبة شيء. People left because they didn't think that leaving the speech of the Prophet ﷺ has any harm on the prayer. So the Prophet's giving a talk, but it's not mandatory attendance. It's just, you know, like if you're sitting listening to a lecture, you got a phone call and you walked out. I wouldn't be like, oh, where are you going? What lecture going on over here? Because it's not part of the thing, right? So they didn't think it was part of the prayer, which is why they walked away. Okay, so فأنزل الله عز وجل وإذا رأوا تجارة أو لهوا انفضوا إليها. Then Allah revealed this. Meaning Allah could have revealed beforehand, don't leave the khutbah. He allowed this to happen and then He revealed it. Because He wanted the Sahaba to experience this incident. Where so many of them thought it's harmless. Yeah, we'll just go get some things for our family, no problem. فقدم النبي صلى الله عليه وسلم الخطبة يوم الجمعة وأخر الصلاة. And after this ayah came, the Prophet ﷺ decided that he's going to give the khutbah first and then lead the Jummah prayer. So the switch happened after the coming of this ayah. Okay? وأخر الصلاة. And he delayed the prayer. وكان لا يخرج أحد. Now what happens after this ayah came? So the next Friday and the Friday after that and the Friday after that. And then after that, no one would leave. لِرُعَافٍ. If their nose started bleeding. أو أحداثٍ. Or anything that happened. Somebody nose started bleeding and they're still, I'm not moving. Allah gave the ayah. They walked away. I ain't walking away. Okay? Or no matter what happened. بعد النهي حتى, after this prohibition, حتى يستأذن النبي, until they would ask the Prophet ﷺ's permission. How are they going to ask permission? They would have to interrupt the khutbah. So he says, يشير إليه بأصبع التي تلي الإبهام, meaning the finger that is next to the thumb, meaning your index finger. Somebody who had to leave would be like that to the Prophet ﷺ, which means, Ya Rasulullah, my nose is bleeding. I think I need to go, or I think I broke my pinky or something. They raise their hand and they just raise their finger like this. And the Prophet ﷺ would say, would do فَيَأْذَنُ لَهُ النَّبِي ثُمَّ يُشِيرُ إِلَيْهِ بِيَدِهِ. And the Prophet ﷺ would just indicate with his hand and he can go. And that became the adab of the khutbah. Like if you were going to get up and go, you can't just walk away. You would just indicate to the Prophet quietly, and the Prophet ﷺ would give you just a gesture by your hand. It's okay. And then you could walk out. Right? So immediately how it transformed the culture of the Sahaba and their collective culture. They became just these people of adab. فَكَانَ مِنَ الْمُنَافِقِينَ مَنْ ثَقُلَ عَلَيْهِ الْخُطْبَةِ. So among the hypocrites, there were those for whom the khutbah was really hard to listen to. They didn't want to hear the khutbah. The hypocrites. وَالْجُلُوسُ فِي الْمَسْجِدِ. And sitting in the masjid. Why I gotta sit here? Can this be over already? وَكَانَ إِذَا. By the way, the khutbahs of the Prophet ﷺ were whatever we have, whatever records we have of any khutbahs he's given. Those of you that are interested in Arabic, there's a book called Khutubur Rasul sallallahu alaihi wasallam. It's a nice collection of whatever khutbahs we do have. Not all of them are khutbatul Jumu'ah. Some of them are just public speeches. But if you actually take a survey of them, they don't last more than 2 to 3 minutes. They're not long speeches at all. They're just very short speeches. Unless the records are just of the summary of what he spoke. It could be the case too. Because the narrations aren't a transcript of his speech. somebody's remembering the key points of his speech, it could be like that too, right? So, but they don't seem like they're very long speeches at all. Anyway, وَكَانَ إِذَا اسْتَأْذَنَ رَجُلٌ مِنَ الْمُسْلِمِينَ. So when one of the Muslims would just kind of raise their finger for what purpose? To get permission? قَامَ الْمُنَافِقِ إِلَى جَنْبِهِ. The hypocrite would stand right next to him. And then مُسْتَتِرًا بِهِ حَتَّى يَخْرُجَ. And he would kind of walk right next to him, hiding himself with him until he could get out too. Sounds like those kids in school that like kind of duck and they leave with the other kid. فأنزل الله تعالى قد يعلم الله الذين يتسللون منكم لواذا. Surah An-Nur. Allah revealed also, Allah knows the people that slip out behind an excuse. Allah knows those people too. Right? So that's mentioned in Surah An-Nur. وهذا الخبر إن لم ينقل من وجه ثابت فالظن الجميل بأصحاب النبي يوجب أن يكون صحيحا. As Suhaili said, even though this narration is mursal, it makes it, he feels compelled to believe it because it retains the integrity of the Sahaba رضي الله عنهم أجمعين. Okay. وقال قتادة بلغنا أنهم فعلوه ثلاث مرات. Qatada says, it has reached us, they did this 3 different times. كل مرة عير تقدم من الشام وكل ذلك يوافق يوم الجمعة. Every time it would come from Syria, those Syrians. And then every time it would be right at the time of Friday prayer. إن خروجهم لقدوم ضحية القلب بتجارته ونظرهم إلى العير تمر لهو لا فائدة فيه. And now it's as if Allah is saying, because he said trade and distraction. Trade or distraction. Those are 2 separate things. But one way to interpret it is as if them looking at that trade opportunity and going to it amounts to nothing more than distraction compared to what they were leaving. So actually an alternative term for trade was used as distraction. إلا أنه كان مما لا إثم فيه لو وقع على غير ذلك الوجه. Had it been at any other time, there would have been no sin in doing so. لكنه لما اتصل به الأعراض إعراض عن رسول الله والانفضاض عن حضرته غلظ وكبر. The fact that you were walking away from the Prophet makes this a big deal. This is why it became a big deal. And that's why the ayah was revealed. Okay, now, this is just a little bit of a poem, very famous among the Arabs. I'll read it to you. So the word mal, anyone know what mal means? Mal means money, but mala, the verb, means to incline. To incline. So it's a play on words. رأيت الناس قد مالوا إلى من عنده مال ومن لا عنده مال فعنه الناس قد مالوا. So you hear mal over and over? It's using both meanings. It says, I see people inclined towards someone who has money. And whoever doesn't have money, people don't move towards him, they move away from him. وَرَأَيْتُ النَّاسَ قَدْ ذَهَبُوا. ذَهَبَ in Arabic means to go. But ذهب also means gold. ذهبun means gold. But why does ذهب and ذهب have the same spelling? It's actually because the Arab philosophy is gold doesn't stay with you. It goes. Somebody gonna kill you, or you're gonna die and somebody else is gonna take it. You can't keep it. It's gonna go. Interestingly, fadda in Arabic, fadda means to break apart and leave. Fadda. And fidda is silver. Similar idea. You can have the silver, but it's gonna break apart and leave. You're not gonna keep the wealth. It's gonna go. Okay? So fadda and fidda, zahaba and zahab, right? رَأَيْتُ النَّاسَ قَدْ ذَهَبُوا. I saw people, they go, إِلَى مَنْ عِنْدَهُ ذَهَبٌ. They go towards someone who has gold. They do dhahab to someone who has dhahab. وَلَا مَنْ عِنْدَهُ وَمَنْ لَا عِنْدَهُ ذَهَبٌ فَعَنْهُ النَّاسُ قَدْ ذَهَبُوا. And whoever doesn't have dhahab, well, people dhahab from him. رَأَيْتُ النَّاسَ مُنْفَضَّةً. I see that people break off and run. إِلَى مَنْ عِنْدَهُ فِضَّةً. They go towards someone who has silver. وَمَنْ لَا عِنْدَهُ فِضَّةً. And someone who doesn't have fidda. فَعَنْهُ النَّاسُ مُنْفَضَّةً. And people then break away from him. If you don't have money, people break away from you. It's like, some of you guys, you live in, Europe, and then you go back home for vacation or a wedding or aqiqah, or your mom's forcing you to marry someone, whatever your situation is. But when you go back, everybody looks at you like you just came from, you had climbed up one of the trees of Jannah, and you came and you probably have some leaves of Jannah in your pocket. So they come to you like, so you got a lot of money, right? Yeah. They're always like, let's hang out with him, or let's hang out with, they're going to take us to the expensive restaurant. I wonder what, and when you're unpacking your suitcase to take out your smelly clothes, they think that you have a treasure chest of giveaways for the village. So they come towards you because you come from the land of dhahab and fidda, right? And then if you decide you're going to move back and you're not, you're not going to live in Germany or Canada or Australia or the US, then people are like, nah, I'm gonna dhahab from you because you're no longer dhahab, bro. Then your dhahab days are over. The golden days are gone. Right? So anyway, but the idea is that, trade and money is in fact attractive. Now let's get to the heart of the matter. I've read the narration to you, but the main lessons I want to discuss with you in regards to this ayah.
Assalamu alaikum everyone. There are almost 50,000 students around the world that are interested, on top of the students we have, in studying the Quran and its meanings and being able to learn that and share that with family and friends. And they need sponsorships, which is not very expensive. So if you can help sponsor students on Bayyinah TV, please do so and visit our sponsorship page. I appreciate it so much and pray that Allah gives our mission success and we're able to share the meanings of the Quran and the beauty of it the world over.